there's obviously a lot of stories that we could focus on tonight. It would be wrong for me not to start where I really do want to start, which is our despicable Congresswoman.
Okay, but then are you going to go into Florida Bites?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do Florida Bites.
Okay.
Because Lord knows, because she really bites the big one and bites the dust all at the same time. Do you like that?
Do you like my Florida Bites?
For those of you who do not know, our Congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, is the definition of open for business. There is nobody that she won't do business with for the right price. And that, of course, includes the very, what's the best way to describe what's going on with Cuba right now?
Right-wing pro-Cuba lobby?
Yeah. Well, there is a right-wing pro-Cuba lobby in this country. It's called the U.S.-Cuba Democracy PAC is who funds it. But there is just a U.S.-Cuba I might have to look it up what the exact term is. You know what?
This is definitely starting to become a real issue down here. There's like this sort of civil war almost down the line through the Cuban community regarding their thoughts on this issue. And my thoughts are that other than it's our job to remove our embargo and remove our blockade and leave them alone, really it's not our business. So if we want to criticize them, we can do that from afar and mind our business and stop being a blockade to those people, because that's really what it is. This is a blockade. It's not an embargo, it's a blockade. And the thing is, what I'm noticing is
it's just called the Cuba American Lobby. That's the name of it.
Well, what I'm noticing, and this is from, and I, have connections into the Hands Off Venezuela, Hands Off Cuba group. And I've definitely learned a lot about this within the past, couple of years. Yeah. But what it really appears like to me, and this is the same for Venezuela, what this is it's a class struggle, just like it is here, just like it is everywhere around the world. Right. And so the people that are wanting regime change are the capitalist corporatists because they want to be able to control what is going on in these countries. And the people that don't want that are the rest of the people. So when we hear people talking about, like our Congresswoman, yes, she supports regime change in Venezuela. That's what wealthy white Venezuelans want. That's who she's speaking to. My thoughts is that it wouldn't be necessarily different in Cuba, that there's going to be a divide between what corporatists want and what is good for the regular people. But what I do know is this, that our blockade is very bad for the regular people. So if we're going to sit there and talk about that we're trying to help the Cuban people, did you share the thing or no?
I haven't yet, but I'm about to.
So if you want to sit there and talk about that you are about helping the Cuban people by changing their government, let's start with stopping our blockade and let their government function as it will. Let's start there. And then if there is some sort of problem, like they're committing a genocide or something that warrants our interference, we can then address that then. But right now, it's not our problem. We need to leave them alone. But our Congresswoman...
Roger, the one thing I will say about AOC, and we will discuss this with Sam Sear when he comes on, she caught a lot of heat the other day for putting out a tweet on behalf of, basically regime change in Cuba. And she caught a lot of hell for it, and she took it down and then subsequently put up a tweet in support of ending the embargo. So listen, if AOC is no different than any other politician who is a career climber, then push her. Make her be afraid that she's not going to get where she wants to go unless she listens to the people. And clearly what she said, she thought was going to be good for her career, and it turns out it's not. So she ended up flip-flopping, which is what all politicians pretty much do.
It's so frustrating.
Sucks, but that's ultimately what she did. But I can tell you somebody who isn't a flip-flopper, to her credit, she's just corporate through and through and through.
So
and
on to Florida Bites.
Our Congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. How many of you know that she is the biggest recipient of corporate money from the U.S.-Cuba lobby, which is a arm of the GOP? She's number one. $10,000 in campaign PAC money every single election cycle. Every one. This is who they give their money to. And why do they do that? Because there is a huge contingent of Democrats in South Florida, particularly in this congressional district. And by having a representative like her in the Democratic Party, she keeps her constituents in the dark about the embargo, about the sanctions, All she does is rub elbows with her BFF, Mario Diaz-Balart, and Marco Rubio. And they all get together, and there's no difference here.
So this is a question for Democrats out there that are like, have that kind of go blue thing. If she's in line with them, isn't that like kind of a red flag, figuratively and literally?
Well,
like,
it's not just that. There's
like,
many layers that go into something like that I don't think a lot of people really understand. There are people who still don't get that the only thing that truly matters in politics is whether or not you take corporate special interest money. You could get into debates after the fact with people like AOC and whether or not they're career climbers. But 99 times out of 100, the ones who don't take the corporate money are not going to be espousing talking points like, let's drop bombs on Cuba, because that's what's going to solve the problem.
She didn't say that.
She didn't say that.
Don't make it sound like she did not say that.
She'll have somebody else say it.
Well, she would. I don't think she'd be opposed to it. Let's say. Well, she's never met a war or bombing that she was opposed to.
No.
So.
And so that, to me, more than anything else, is the biggest problem that we have with our representatives, is that we don't have a strong coalition here in South Florida that is against the embargo, that is against the sanctions.
We do. But I'd like to say it is predominantly Miami-Dade and not in Broward. So
that is true.
She doesn't really deal with that. If she is not as confronted with that where we go down to the caravan, that is where, like, she would not be welcome there.
No.
And that's a huge amount of the Cubans. And when we were at that, it was very noticeable to me that there were more of the people on the progressive side than on the right side.
That is true, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a movement for that. Now, what you have to understand is that there are many layers to it. It is very possible that, the shadow government is involved in some capacity. They may be, paying, volunteers to do this. And I'm not saying, I'm not espousing support for communism. Now, I don't support it. But if the Cuban people support it, then that's their right to self-determination.
That's not our problem.
We're not going to be able to determine whether or not they are able to sustain themselves through a communist regime if we don't get the hell out of their business. One of the biggest reasons they're struggling is because we've put so many economic sanctions on them. And I will say this, one of the things that you can say that Obama did do well in his presidency was how he handled Cuba. He actually did a great job. That may be the best job he did as president. And who was there to stymie his efforts in Cuba? Debbie effing Wasserman Schultz. All the way back in 2014, 2015, when Obama was trying to have normal relations with Cuba, she was standing right there saying, nope, we don't want that. And as a matter of fact, and we can discuss this at a later show, but it turns out that Debbie has basically been a front for the U.S.-Cuba faction. And I'm talking the, anti-Castro Cuba faction, the GOP Cuba faction. She has been doing this all the way back since her second congressional term in the mid-2000s. So much so that she was apparently a backstabber to a handful of sitting Democrats. That she was going behind their back.
It doesn't surprise me.
And
it doesn't
basically making dealings with with people who were pro regime change. She's never met a war she doesn't like.
No. In fact, I remember when I had moved, like after I moved here, one of the first things that infuriated me about her is she specifically had said she was not going to keep supporting the war in Iraq. And then not only did she do that, she voted for the surge.
Yeah.
She got behind the surge. I'm sure Obama offered her something nice for that.
As I like to say, just follow the money. That's all you need to do. You only need to follow the money. There is nothing else that truly matters when it comes to this representative. And in a way, that's a good thing, because at least you know that, like I said, she is open for business. So whatever amount of money you are willing to give her in order to get what you're looking for, if she names a price, you give it to her, she's going to do what you ask.
Yeah.
It's sick, but that's how it is. And this is no different. She's been doing this for decades now. But this is really bad because a lot of people can end up getting seriously hurt. A lot of people can end up getting killed. And this is a dangerous time. We still have COVID that's rampant. There are people who aren't able to get vaccines or medication. And who's stopping it? We are. Because we have corporate special interests that want to be invested in Cuba. And the Cuban government does not want to do business with us. So by that extension, the working class of the Cuban island must suffer, because the people with means do not suffer. That is the way this works. Just like the citizens of Venezuela, the ones who suffer in Venezuela are working class people, not people with ways and means. Doesn't work that way. So saying that we must deal with this representative would be an understatement, because I truly believe that, again, not only is she still in charge of the Democratic Party, because she has a very close relationship with Michael Bloomberg, and Michael Bloomberg saw to it that
he just bought it. He just bought the party.
Manny Diaz saw to it to have him become our chair of the party.
And for people who don't know, that's a Republican who's in charge of our Democratic Party.
He's basically been a lifelong Republican. Sorry, Lourdes, but it's true. And you have Mr. Diaz going on all local and national stations, basically, just espousing GOP talking points about this issue. And so where is the sensibility? Where is that common sense? It doesn't exist right now.
No.
And so from my perspective, I believe that in the case of our Congresswoman, if anybody lines up with her, we're going to remember that you did. This has got to stop. At what point do you say it really is time to move on?
It just depends on how much of your tongue is attached to her boots, I suppose. That's what I think. Because when I look at the people down here, and I'm not going to mention names, but some of those girls that came out for her when they claimed to be sort of like progressive, like they would claim to be one thing, but that all has to do with them sucking up to her. And I really do. I think they're climbers, and I think that they're just their mouths are attached to her ass.
That she is the queen, and that she and in many ways she is.
Well, I'm sure she also threatens people and whatever.
Oh well, she rules with an iron fist. Everybody knows that. That's not a new thing about Wasserman Schultz. That has always been her MO, and that's how she stays in power. Remember, right now she doesn't have a challenger for the primary. And yet she has still raised $750,000. And why do they raise that money? Well, as it turns out, there was I think we talked about this in one of our previous shows, how there was a conference recently where the Progressive Caucus, and again, we use that term loosely on Capitol Hill.
Correct. But there's so many of them. Where are they?
The Progressive Caucus, the Progressive Caucus was having this phone conference, and one of the representatives, I can't remember her name, but she's very close to Pelosi, and she represents an area that's part of Silicon Valley. And she talks about the fact that, I'm in a safe blue district, and I raise all this money and I give it to these other representatives for their elections. And so what you're basically saying is, I buy influence, is what you're doing, because that's what Debbie does. Debbie stuffs the coffers of other candidates with all of that corporate money, because that's what she gets. That money, those hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's just a laundry list of all these organizations that she does business with. The Cuba U.S. lobby, that's just one of many. But $10,000 every election cycle is what she's getting from them. It's what she's getting from General Dynamics. It's what she's getting from Walmart, I believe. The list just goes on and on. But there is no one that she will not take the money from. You want to say that she probably wouldn't take it from the NRA? Okay, yeah, she's got to keep up appearances. But overall, all of that money that is being received is coming from those corporate interests. And so the fact that she is the number one recipient of corporate money from the Cuba lobby, there's no surprise there.
Okay.
In the whole country. And it's a Democrat.
Whole country.
And what's even more...
Well, granted, she is in Florida, and this is the largest Cuban community in the country.
That is true. But here's the interesting thing. You can be a representative in any part of the country and espouse support for this cause. So when you look at the list on Open Secrets of who are the top 10 recipients of corporate money from the U.S. Cuba lobby, she is number one, and the next 10 are Republicans.
Unbelievable.
So it just goes to show you that there really is, again, so much of why this district hasn't changed and is so difficult for Jen to win here is because they're very old.
Yeah, but yeah, she's a real Democrat there.
And they're really set in their ways. And Broward is,
oh my God.
Again, it is a very important piece of political real estate, but it still presents itself as something bigger than what it really is. And so that's what we're trying to change. And, hopefully we will. Why are you displaying this level when we said we weren't even going to talk about it anymore?
Oh, because I had to change somebody I downgraded.
Yeah. So again,
Guys, be Patreons.
Yes.
So before Sam comes on. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.